Welcome back to Jameel Cast, where we explore ideas and innovations shaping the future of our world. Join us as we uncover perspectives and insights at the intersection of purpose and progress, featuring voices from across Abdul Latif Jameel's international network of businesses. This is Alex, your AI host.
And I'm Omar, your AI co-host. Welcome.
Great to see you again, Omar.
Yes, great to be here, Alex. And today we have a really fascinating topic lined up for you. We're diving into something I think I can call Eastern Horizons, exploring the incredible, evolving relationship between the Middle East and the Far East.
Exactly. And to help us unpack this huge subject, we're thrilled to be joined by our two guests today. We have Sophie with us. Sophie, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to this discussion.
And also, we've got Jade in the studio. Jade, it's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, totally. And very excited to share some insights.
So in this episode, we'll discuss all about how these two dynamic regions are really reshaping the global landscape. From historical ties to modern partnerships, we're going to cover it all. So if we're ready to get started, let's dive right in. So I guess, Sophie, if we're looking at the roots of this relationship, we really have to go way back, don't we? I mean, the ancient Silk Road immediately comes to mind.
Yes, exactly. That's right. I mean, it's not a new phenomenon at all. The Middle East, North Africa and Turkey, the MENAT region, it shares a really rich and storied history with the Far East. From those ancient trade routes like the Silk Road, which were so vital for centuries, right? All the way to today's digital communication channels.
Right, so it's not just about recent developments. This long historical connection, it just really sets the stage for what we're seeing now, doesn't it?
Totally. And what I'm trying to say is, in recent decades, we've seen both regions really double down and strengthen those ties significantly. They're forging kind of really powerful economic and cultural partnerships, and that's across a huge range of sectors.
Yeah, from infrastructure to tourism, even energy and defense. It really does feel like these strengthened ties are fundamentally reshaping the global economic and cultural landscape, if that makes sense. It's, quite profound.
Absolutely. It's truly a fascinating evolution to witness.
Okay, so let's zoom in a bit then on Saudi Arabia's relationship with China, because that's a really central part of this story, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. I mean, historically, Saudi Arabia had very close ties with the US and Western Europe, right? But in the 1990s, they sort of, really started recognizing this shift in global dynamics. And that's when they began strengthening relationships with Asian countries like Japan, South Korea, and obviously China.
Right, so it was a very conscious pivot then. And I guess on China's side, they were also looking to strengthen these ties, especially with, the launch of their Belt and Road Initiative in 2013.
Totally. And to be honest, China's move wasn't just about the BRI. In 2016, they even published their Arab policy paper, which, really underscored the historical, civilizational, and geo-economic reasons for deeper ties. They basically wanted a stronger Arab world connection.
That's really interesting, that policy paper. So it's not just economic, but also rooted in history and broader geo-economic strategy.
Exactly. And since then, China has signed cooperation agreements with nearly all Arab states, with many even joining the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the AIIB. It's a pretty clear signal.
And I guess for Saudi Arabia, having China as a partner, it really helps them diversify their foreign relations and supports their ambitious domestic economic reforms like Vision 2030, right?
Well, that does matter, doesn't it? Saudi Arabia's influence in the Arab and Islamic world, plus its critical role in the global energy market, makes it a vital partner for China. It's a mutual benefit, for sure.
Okay, so with that context, let's talk about the specific milestones. What were some of the really pivotal moments that kind of solidified this relationship between Saudi Arabia and China?
Well, the first high-level state interactions actually happened way back in 1999, when Chinese President Jiang Zemin visited Saudi Arabia. And then King Abdullah reciprocated, visiting China in 2006. So, the groundwork was laid early. Exactly. But then it really ramped up, significantly, You had President Xi Jinping visiting Saudi Arabia in 2017, and King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud going to China in the same year. And then Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in 2019, and President Xi Jinping again in 2022. These weren't just courtesy calls, they were strategic.
Right, so those visits, I guess, kind of expanded the bilateral cooperation into, broader areas like political, security, military, and obviously economic and infrastructure projects.
Totally. And one of the biggest outcomes of Xi's 2016 visit was the formation of the Sino-Saudi High-Level Joint Committee, the HLJC. That really focused on economic and strategic collaboration, and around $30 billion in deals were signed between the two countries during that visit alone.
Wow, 30 billion. That's substantial. And then I guess that committee kept meeting, right? Did it lead to more concrete initiatives?
Oh, it did, for sure. In 2017, the second HLJC meeting led to something pretty cool: the creation of a joint investment fund and the Saudi Silk Road Company for Industrial Services. That was specifically aimed at boosting investment in Saudi Arabia's Jizan province, if that makes sense.
So it wasn't just about general trade, it was really getting down to specific targeted investments. And then, in 2022, I remember reading about a series of summits. How significant were those?
Well, very significant, in fact. In 2022, there were 3 milestone summits: the Saudi-Chinese Summit, the first China-Gulf Cooperation Council Summit, and the first Arab-Chinese Summit. These really reinforced Saudi Arabia's role as China's gateway to the MENA region. Exactly. And they laid the foundation for even deeper cooperation in areas like energy, investment, education, and cultural exchanges. At the end of the day, it's all about the alignment of China's BRI with Saudi Vision 2030. That's what continues to drive all these efforts.
So, we've talked about the strategic alignment, the big summits, and the committees. Now, let's really get into the numbers, right? What's been the tangible economic impact of these strengthened ties between Saudi Arabia and China?
Yes. Well, let's look into that. The economic impact is pretty massive, to be honest. Saudi Arabia was actually China's first trading partner in the MENAT region, and since 2001, it's been China's largest trading partner in the Middle East. And then, as of 2013, China became Saudi Arabia's top trading partner overall. So, that's a huge shift. Totally. And the trade volume has just increased dramatically. We're talking from $417 billion in 1990, jumping all the way to $107 billion in 2023. And the total trade volume between 2019 and 2023, over $419 billion. It's just astounding.
Wow, that's truly a surge. And when we talk about trade, what are the primary goods flowing between them? I guess oil is a big one, right?
Oh, absolutely. China is the largest importer of Saudi crude oil. In 2022, hydrocarbons alone accounted for nearly $66 billion of the $78 billion in Saudi exports to China. And then, Chinese exports to Saudi Arabia are mainly consumer goods, electronics, textiles, that sort of thing.
So, beyond just trade, what about investment? Has China really, poured money into Saudi Arabia, especially with Vision 2030 in mind?
Oh, 100%, Omar. China's support for Saudi Vision 2030 has led to a massive surge in investment since 2016. From 2005 to June 2024, China invested something like $54 billion in Saudi infrastructure projects. Most of that, like $9 billion, was just from 2019 to 2024.
That's a significant amount of capital flowing in.
Yeah, and it's not just infrastructure. In 2019, they signed 35 economic cooperation agreements worth $28 billion. And then in 2022, another $30 billion in deals, focusing on green energy, digital tech, transport, basically everything. It just shows the breadth of the economic relationship, I guess. And to be honest, nearly 750 Chinese companies now operate in Saudi markets.
That's really fascinating, hearing about the broader economic landscape and the sheer scale of trade and investment. So, let's pivot a bit and talk about specific companies that are really driving this collaboration. And, of course, a big one for us is Abdul Latif Jameel. Can you tell us how Jameel Motors has been a part of this growing relationship, especially with China?
Absolutely, Omar. That's a great point you bring up. Because Abdul Latif Jameel has basically a really long history there. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary of entering the Chinese automotive market. Our involvement, actually started way back in 1998 in Chengdu, initially with Toyota and Lexus vehicles.
Wow, that's a long time. So how has that strategic focus evolved, especially with the rise of new energy vehicles, the NEVs, that we're seeing?
Right. So, basically it's evolved quite a lot. We've seen this rapid rise of NEVs, and our strategic focus has definitely shifted with that. We have plans for significant future growth in that area. For example, in 2024, Jameel Motors signed an agreement with Zhejiang Geely Farizon New Energy Commercial Vehicle Group. They're a leader, in new energy commercial vehicles in China.
That sounds like a really significant partnership. What does that mean for distribution?
Well, it greenlights the distribution of Farizon Auto NEVs across 11 countries, with a combined population of over 450 million. So, it's a huge step. And we also have strong and growing links with several other fast-growing Chinese automotive brands like BYD, MG Motor, GAC Motor, Chang'an, and Geely Auto passenger vehicles. We even opened a new corporate office in Shenzhen, China, in October 2024. It really shows, how Jameel Motors is not just observing this shift, but actively participating and driving the collaboration in such a key sector. It underscores our role in this broader economic relationship between the regions.
Okay, so that's really quite a comprehensive overview of the automotive side. And, it highlights how deeply intertwined these economies are becoming. So now let's broaden that a bit. What about other key industry sectors? We're seeing massive infrastructure projects and a huge digital push. How are the Far East and China in particular impacting these areas across the MENAT region?
Right, so, it's huge, Alex. You're absolutely spot on. We're seeing really large-scale, wide-ranging construction projects all over the MENAT region with significant Far Eastern involvement. Think about it, from dams built in Sudan to the Jazan Industrial Cluster, which is a joint China-Saudi Arabia project, and even the new Jama El Jazair Mosque in Algeria, It's really changing the skylines. Exactly. It's not just the physical infrastructure either. Behind the scenes, digital infrastructure is just booming. Chinese firms, including Huawei, Alibaba, and Tencent, are massively increasing their presence in places like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt.
So basically, they're helping to power the region's demand for smart cities and cutting-edge tech?
Totally, Omar. They're critical for cloud computing, e-commerce platforms, and next-generation 5G networks. It's, transforming how business and communications operate in the region.
So, it really sounds like the Far East is helping to, build and connect the MENAT region physically and digitally. But what about some of the other really critical sectors? I'm thinking, obviously, energy is a huge one for both sides, and also tourism, which has just been booming lately.
Oh, absolutely, Omar. Energy, first off, is a massive area of strategic interest. The GCC nations, they boast, 45% of the world's proven oil reserves. And China, is the GCC's largest trading partner. They import 40% of their oil from Arab countries. It's a huge dependency, to be honest. Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about the oil either anymore. While those collaborations are crucial, for example, Saudi Aramco's long-standing partnership with Sinopec, the shift towards renewables, that's really where you see a lot of the future focused. Under Vision 2030, Saudi Arabia aims for 50% of its electricity from renewable sources by 2030, And, the Far East, they are totally helping to make that a reality, right? We're talking solar and wind projects, like the Silk Road Fund's involvement in over 12 gigawatts of solar assets in the kingdom.
That's really fascinating, Sophie, the pivot to renewables. So, moving from energy, what about tourism? I mean, China is the world's largest source of outbound tourists, and Saudi Arabia, has these ambitious targets for Vision 2030. How are those two aligning?
Right, so I guess it's a huge focus. Saudi Arabia has this ambitious target to attract 5 million Chinese visitors annually by 2030, which would make China their third largest source of tourists. And they're really making it easier for Chinese citizens to get visas. Yeah, and let me think. Saudi Arabian Airlines actually launched direct flights to China just last year in 2023, which helps a lot with connectivity. And the Saudi Tourism Authority, they held their first big international promotional campaign in Shanghai. It reached about 500 million Chinese people, which is just incredible, attracting almost 80,000 attendees. And, to add to that, China actually granted Saudi Arabia-approved destination status for Chinese group tours. So now, many Chinese travel agencies are offering Saudi tour packages. The numbers are just soaring. I mean, over 100,000 Chinese tourists visited in the first half of 2024 alone. That's a 29% year-on-year growth, if that makes sense.
Wow. So that tourism growth, that's just incredible, connecting people on such a scale. And it really brings to mind something else. How about the cultural side of things? Beyond economics and infrastructure, how are China and Saudi Arabia fostering cultural and educational exchange?
That's a great point, Omar. I mean, Vision 2030, it's really keen on showcasing Saudi Arabia's heritage and soft power globally. And China, to be honest, totally endorses this. It's like a way to nurture continued alignment between them. Yeah, exactly. You've seen a lot of initiatives in recent years, covering everything from libraries and cultural institutions to visual and performing arts. I mean, it's pretty comprehensive.
That sounds really comprehensive. So, are there any sort of specific examples of cultural or educational milestones that really stand out? I'm curious about that, to be honest.
Oh, for sure, Alex. Education is a massive focus, right? For example, the opening of the King Abdulaziz Public Library at Peking University in 2017. That was a huge milestone. It's the largest Arab platform in China, which is pretty significant. And, there's also the language aspect. In 2019, Saudi Arabia announced they'd be introducing Mandarin into Saudi schools at all levels. That's a pretty big shift from the long-standing policy of teaching only one foreign language. Totally. And, China reciprocated, I guess, by expanding the teaching of Arabic. Both countries are really pushing student exchanges too. So you're seeing a growing number of Saudi undergrads opting to study in China, and vice versa. It's quite interesting, this new trend, if that makes sense.
That's really smart. Basically setting up future generations. Those students today, they're the ones who will become the investors, innovators, and entrepreneurs of tomorrow. They're going to view Sino-Saudi cooperation as, like, the norm, right? It's just inherently built into their mindset now.
Well, exactly. It's creating a foundation for enduring collaboration, which is really powerful.
That's some really good points you bring across, Omar and Jade. I mean, we focused a lot on China, which is obviously a huge player. But what about other significant MENAT countries? Are they also enhancing their ties with the Far East beyond China? Like, Japan or South Korea?
Oh, totally, Alex. I mean, it's not just about China. Saudi Arabia and Japan, for example, have this really strong partnership, especially in energy. Japan sources like 40% of its crude oil imports from the kingdom. And, Japanese companies are super involved in petrochemical projects too, like the Petro Rabigh venture. Interesting. And Japan has been a really important partner for Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, contributing expertise in technology and innovation, which is pretty key. Robotics, AI, renewables, they're all in there. They even signed agreements on clean energy, like ammonia and carbon recycling, aiming for net zero.
Right, so it's not just Saudi Arabia. Does Japan have similar deep ties with other MENAT countries? Say, Egypt, for instance?
Absolutely. Japanese investment plays a pivotal role in Egypt's infrastructure, especially with projects like the Cairo metro system. I mean, JICA, Japan's International Cooperation Agency, signed an agreement for the first phase of Cairo Metro Line 4 in 2022. It really highlights their ongoing commitment, you know.
And speaking of Japan, Abdul Latif Jameel has had incredibly strong links there for decades, right? Especially with Toyota.
That's correct, Alex. Abdul Latif Jameel has an exceptionally strong 70-year partnership with Toyota. That relationship has been key to driving sustainable automotive mobility in the MENAT region with hybrid and hydrogen-powered vehicles. They even opened a new office in Tokyo recently, reinforcing those ties.
So, moving beyond Japan then, what about South Korea? Are they also expanding their footprint in the MENAT region? I'm curious.
Yeah, they definitely are. South Korea is strengthening its links too. The UAE, for instance, is South Korea's second largest trading partner in the Gulf region. And South Korea has been integral to the UAE's energy sector, notably with the Barakah nuclear power plant, which was built by KEPCO. It's the first of its kind in the Arab world, and they also have a strong history with Turkey, actually. Think about major infrastructure projects like the 1915 Çanakkale Bridge, which is the world's longest suspension bridge, built by South Korean companies. Plus, they've deepened ties in defense, with South Korea supplying technology. And now, they're exploring joint ventures in renewables, especially wind and solar.
That's really fascinating, to be honest. So, basically, it's not just a China-centric pivot, it's a broader, multifaceted engagement across the entire Far East region.
So, I guess, looking ahead, what does the future really hold for these MENAT and Far East relationships? I mean, we've covered so much, from trade to culture.
We definitely have, Omar. At the end of the day, with China firmly established as, one of the world's preeminent economic superpowers, and the Far East as a whole being such a vibrant regional economy, it just makes perfect sense for MENAT countries to really double down on these strategic and economic alliances. Well, if recent years are anything to go by, it's pretty clear that interactions between MENAT, China, and other Far East countries are only going to further bolster the prosperity and political influence of all concerned. That's cementing an enduring, collaborative future for two of the world's most dynamic regions.
When you connect the dots, you see it's not just a fleeting trend. It feels a fundamental shift that's going to shape the global landscape for decades to come.
Well, Sophie and Jade, this has been absolutely fascinating. Thank you both so much for sharing your incredible insights on Eastern Horizons today.
Thanks, Alex and Omar. It's been a really rich discussion. And, we've covered so much ground.
That's right. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive exploring the evolving relationship between the Middle East and the Far East. Join us next time for another engaging conversation. You've been listening to Jameel Cast, the official podcast of Abdul Latif Jameel. For more insights and conversations shaping our future, follow us wherever you get your podcasts or visit alj.com to read our Perspectives articles. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, stay curious.